Now Micah Miller trying to spring a pass ahead. Nobody in front of Jack Paling. Moves on with a blast and scores! Jack Paling with
We aren't giving up on chances, and we just got to bottom line execute.
Waits, passes in front, great save, Paluzzi, as she robs a Gopher in front of her, and that was number 8, Kippen Keller, on the grade A opportunity.
For me as a coach, that's the kind of D you're always looking for, because they don't grow on trees for sure, and he's done a really good job being a captain of a really young team this year.
It was a really cool thing to see for them to really appreciate what I've done on and off the ice.
to the far half wall. Jack Paling trying to play it into the corner. Now Paling turns, squares his body to the slot, sends it up high toward Jack. Sean makes its way through, and they score! Right along the blue line, Nick Paling was in front of the net, and St. Cloud State's got a lead here in the
And welcome back to the Den, Husky Warming House podcast fans. It's episode number 27. This Saturday morning, Noah Grant, along with myself, Nick Maxon. Noah Grant, you know, at the end of the day, this week, I should say, is we have some very special guests with Olympic ties. We have some news to catch up around college as well as the professional game. Lots of things happening up in Edmonton and in Toronto. But Noah, it's Saturday morning. It's 7:30 in the morning. It's our new record time for those folks listening in for the first time. We are switching to kind of get the podcast out earlier. And I just want to say, why are we doing this, man? I mean, this early. I'm a half a cup of coffee in. I'm actually starting to get awake, which is good. But man, getting up this morning, it was a rough. But welcome to the show.
This was a bad idea. I don't know whose idea it was. Just kidding. It was
yours.
So, I don't know. We're going to see how this goes. We might have to not do this just because we're too tired to be able to. But you know what, Nick? Honestly, it's worth it, right? It's worth it getting up at 7:30 every morning. It's exciting to be able to share this content with you. I'm a little bit frustrated because I didn't do the Buccigross overtime challenge in the Dallas game the other night. And it was one of those sixth senses where I was like, I think this kid's going to get a hat trick. But like, you don't ever enter, right? Because 300 people always win. And you're kind of like, I'm never.
And your name never gets picked, right? So
exactly. So, it's been great. So Nick, today it's a little interesting because of our early start. We don't actually have a trivia winner today because our trivia is probably going to be coming out around the time that this episode comes out. So we're going to announce today's trivia winner on next week's show, and then so on and so forth, and life will be back to normal again. But speaking of that as well, Nick, we're doing a follower drive. If you can look behind me, for those of you on the YouTube show, it's over my left shoulder. We finally got t-shirts for the Huskies Warming House podcast, and we're going to give 5 of them away. We're trying to shoot for 300 Twitter followers and 100 Facebook followers. So tell your friends, tell your family. If your dog has Facebook, I know some people have.
I think Kirsten Kroll's Bodie has a Facebook and a Twitter, so we should get him signed up as well.
Yeah, definitely. So like I said, we're searching for 300 Twitter followers and 100 Facebook followers. We're currently at 190 on Twitter, so about 100 to go. And then we're at 73 on Facebook, but only 72 likes, Nick. I don't know what's up with that. I don't know if one person follows us but doesn't actually like us. It might be you. I don't know. I have no idea.
If you won't tell anybody, I won't. So we'll keep it our secret, or at least maybe now it's not since we're recording this. So that's okay. Everybody knows now.
Yeah. And another thing to know, Nick, we had 2 listener questions, or I should say 2 listeners with questions. One listener, we're going to get to that question a little bit later in the show. Maybe we'll read that one off first. We're going to kind of enter this one after the interview that we have with our 2 guests today. Just a little 10-minute discussion on kind of some of the answers. So we're going to read it off for you so you know what to anticipate here. It comes from our listener, Derek Felksa, who's just a fantastic dude, fun to talk to. And he says, the NCHC is always such a tough and difficult conference. What school do you see as the favorite going into this season? Which school might surprise people? And who is going to be the surprise standout player or goalie that few have heard, but many maybe soon will? So definitely keep that one in the back of your mind. We're going to touch on that one again after our Healthy Scratch interview segment. And the other one we have, Nick, is more of a personal one. This one was kind of interesting to me. What is the most frustrating thing about a podcast / your podcast? This person wished to not be identified, but they wanted to know what the most frustrating thing about doing our show is? This was a very interesting question, Nick. I think there's a lot of little things that go into this one. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are. For me, if people haven't guessed, I kind of manage the social media stuff, so that's probably why you see the ridiculousness of all the tweets that that come out. But yeah, I would say, just trying to keep our fans engaged, trying to keep our fans up to date. We don't just tweet once a week, right? We want to find times to make sure that whether you check us out in the morning, check us out during your lunch break, check us out when you get home from work and crack a cold one and sit down on the couch and watch Game 7 between Philadelphia and the New York Islanders tonight, that you're keeping up to tabs with what we've got going on. So I don't know if that's really frustrating. It's just more like, you always got to be on it, because we want to make sure as many people get to enjoy our product as we can. We thank you, current listeners. We hope that we get to add a few more listeners and a few more followers. So definitely tell your friends and family about us. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook, yada, 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 advertising. I don't know, Nick.
First of all, I think, honestly, I don't know if frustrating is the right word. There's a lot of work that goes into it. Now, I think I want to be super clear when I say this. I love the game of hockey and I love discussing it. So to me, it's not frustrating. It's just more of, there's a lot of intricacies that go into making this happen, from scheduling interviews to keeping up with both the college as well as the NHL news. At the end of it, we're always trying to be journalistic first, I think, at least from my standpoint. So when we hear news, when we hear rumors per se, especially now trying to nail down if we're going to have a season for college hockey, if it's going to be delayed, we're working tirelessly behind the scenes to try to bring you as much up-to-date information as we can. But we also want to make sure that when we do hear something, that we double and triple check everything. So to me, it's just making sure that whatever we're hearing, whether it's from primary sources, secondary sources, so on and so forth, that the information that we are providing is actually accurate. We want to be, a primary source for you folks and our listeners that come to us for information and for breaking news as well. So it's just, it's just a lot of work. It's a lot of commitment, but I enjoy it, honestly. It is something that I think when we first started this, Noah, and especially after the break that we took when coronavirus first hit, I don't think we would have envisioned that we'd be in the spot with having the plethora of high-profile guests that we've had. It's been a wonderful ride. Definitely, that doesn't mean that, when you folks listen to the podcast or view it here on YouTube, that, we make it seem polished. We care about our product. We certainly want to put the best foot forward every single week, but it's not just getting up, rolling out of bed, throwing a hat on and a sweatshirt. Oh wait, that's me. No, I'm kidding. But there's a lot of stuff that goes behind the scenes. And again, I wouldn't call it frustrating. It's just a lot of things that we have to make sure our I's are dotted, T's are crossed, to make sure that we are putting the best episode for you folks every week.
Well, that's definitely what I did this morning, Nick. I rolled out of bed and just put on my sweatpants and hat last night. So
yes.
I guess we'll see how that works as we get ready to jump into Sunrise View. But, kind of on that note, Nick, I think it's just like you mentioned, just some general life things, right? It's just making sure, like, what is it? You have 2 jobs, maybe 3 jobs. I have a job. We're both going to school. I would say on average, we put 8 to 10 hours at least probably into the show, somewhere around there in a given week.
Yeah, absolutely.
With everything that goes on. So, I mean, it's a lot of fun. I think it's like, it ebbs and flows, right? You have some days where, you get the episode up, you get the feedback. I love seeing how many listeners listened to our last show. I think we had over 100 in our last show with the 3 goaltenders. So that was awesome. So it's fun to see that, but then it's also realizing like, okay, we've got our 2 guests coming on this week. Who's going to be scheduling next week? Did this tweet get out? This morning before we went on the show, Nick, I had to write down 2-line fan trivia and put it behind my door here so I don't forget to write the actual question for today. So just a lot of little things, making sure that we don't say the wrong thing, making sure that everything is polished, that we don't have a video that went wrong. And if there is something wrong, please don't hesitate to DM us, tweet us, email us, anything. We are more than happy to listen to your feedback. We do have our Huskies Warming House remastered episode where we did have some feedback about some background music that was bothering people. So we're more than happy to adjust. We do it all for you guys. We do it for the fans, and hopefully we can grab more fans, more followers, and more listeners and give away 5 free t-shirts, Nick. I don't know, Nick. I'd say maybe if we get closer to 300, 300, can we call it that? 300? Maybe we just thought of a new marketing scheme. Because
not bad. At least it rhymed.
Yeah, 300.
Yeah.
Maybe we might give away a hat too. I don't know. I haven't quite decided yet, but that might be an interesting thing if we get closer and closer to 300. But got a long ways to go. But with that, Nick, I think maybe it's time. Let's jump right into Center Ice View News and Notes.
Center Ice View News and Notes. Center Ice View provides you with the best coverage of St. Cloud State Huskies hockey, from game notes, recaps, photos, and more. Go to centericeview.com.
And once again, Center Ice View News and Notes, Noah. Some interesting developing news coming out of Alaska Anchorage. Again, your jersey that's sitting behind your right shoulder. Sounds like there's an effort to try to save the Seawolves men's hockey team. Actually, ESPN commentator Buchagras had a very long Twitter thread about this, and he was comparing the situation with Alabama Huntsville. It sounds like there's actually a proposal to the Board of Regents to delay the actual vote that would actually make their disposition of the hockey team coming up in later this month, from what it sounds like. So this is a developing story. We'll definitely keep you folks posted on this. I know that we both are on the same page, and we would love to see the hockey team stick around. Again, the jersey, we had a long discussion last episode. Please check out episode number 26 for a further discussion on that, but definitely something we have to keep our eyes on, because we would love to see them stick around again and to see sustainable.
25, episode 25.
25.
At the end of the Don Lucia episode. Yeah, we do too many episodes, and we talk about the same topic. So it definitely almost probably the 26 for sure. Just the one thing I wanted to say there too, the reason they're pushing this meeting back is essentially to create a viable plan of some sort for the university. They don't want it to, and not to discredit Alabama Huntsville, but they don't want it to be a one-year deal. They want it to be a long-term thing that can extend 20, 30, 40 years into the future. For all intent and purposes, however that phrase is supposed to go, I think people butcher that all the time. I hope it works. It's really nice to see these teams from Alaska come up and really gain the traction. Pretty underrated place, I think, to play some hockey. And again, I know we've talked about it extensively, but just wish them the best of luck, because arguably Seawolves have the coolest logo in college hockey. Tweet at us and tell us why we're wrong, but I'm telling you, that's what I think anyway.
Absolutely. Switching gears, former St. Cloud State University forward Patrick Russell, now that Edmonton officially in their offseason has inked a one-year extension valued at $700,000. So our former Husky sticking with the NHL club. Saying again, Edmonton in a kind of a cap situation. Again, it's a flat cap going into the 2020-21 season. So it's a good signing for Edmonton. Again, you're trying to keep some of those same pieces together. Again, you're trying to keep everything as much flexibility in your cap as possible. So good to see another St. Cloud State forward continue his career in the pros, Noah.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, not the only trade that went on in the NHL. We're going to get to that one. We had another pretty big one go on between the Canadians and Blues. But yeah, Nick, it's I don't know. Always good to see guys get their payday, right? To play the game of hockey. I certainly wish. I don't know. I don't want to use the word envy, but gee, cool way to. Yeah, I'd say.
Cool way to spend the day. Speaking of that trade, it was a trade that does, in fact, another former current Husky, and that is Jake Allen being traded from the St. Louis Blues to the Montreal Canadiens. This is a good pickup for the Montreal Canadiens. It does boost their backup position. But with that being said, Noah, this does potentially impact former Husky goaltender Charlie Lindgren, again, a Lakeville, Minnesota native, coming up from Lakeville North. At the end of this, I would think with the money that Montreal is spending on their backup goaltender, Charlie has kind of been a de facto, I guess, number 3 goaltender. I would suppose this move cements that, but also could possibly set up him to be also moved potentially. What do you think about the news of Jake Allen going to the Eastern Conference and to the Mecca that is Montreal?
Yeah, it would have been interesting. I don't know what Charlie Lindgren's salary is. I didn't look it up, but it would have been interesting to see him maybe go back to St. Louis in that trade a little bit, because really the ultimate goal here for St. Louis is to shed some cap space to hopefully re-sign Alex Pietrangelo. So let's kind of break it down for you by the numbers. Montreal gets, of course, goaltender Jake Allen with 1 year left on his deal. He has $4.35 million left on that deal this season. That's how much St. Louis is going to save in that deal. And then Jake Allen is a UFA after next season. He's played all 7 years in St. Louis, and Montreal also gets the 7th round pick of 2022 from St. Louis. And the Blues in return get a 3rd round pick from Montreal that was originally from the Washington Capitals, and a 7th round pick that was originally from Chicago in this year's draft in 2020, plus $4.35 million in cap space. St. Louis currently with just under $6.4 million in cap space this offseason to try to get Alex Pietrangelo re-signed.
I don't think they're done, honestly.
No, definitely. I've read as potentially as many as 4 players could get moved to make room for Alex Pietrangelo, which might be a steep price. I don't know. We'll have to see kind of how the cards play out. St. Louis, I believe they have another goaltending prospect, if I'm not mistaken. That's not too bad. That's coming up in the pipeline too. But I don't know. I think Charlie Lindgren would look good in a Blues uniform. Maybe that's just me. It's a smart trade for both teams. I think, I don't know. I think St. Louis gets a little bit fleeced in this one. I think maybe they could have gotten a 2nd round pick out of this deal. But nonetheless, they did what they needed to do. They moved a goaltender that arguably has a chance to either cement himself as a backup or, I don't know, I don't want to say take the reins over Carey Price. I mean, Carey Price isn't anytime soon, but I definitely think that, Jake Allen has the potential to be a kind of a phantom starter, if you will. But nonetheless, Montreal, for the first time in almost 10 years, has found a legitimate backup goaltender for Carey Price. No offense to Charlie Lindgren or Antti Niemi or Al Montoya or Mike Condon, whoever it's been. But Carey Price has just carried that torch, and that's just how it's been.
Well, and the other thing, too, that just briefly was that Carey Price has had some injury problems over the last couple of years. And, for Montreal, you want to have, again, that bona fide backup that can come in and, play possibly 20 to 25 games. It's been like that for them the last couple of seasons. Carey Price, again, I would say the easily number 1 goaltender in the league right now. And, if he goes down injured, where's Montreal? That team is built from the back end forward in front of Carey Price. Again, he goes down for an injury, and if you don't have a good backup in place, your team is not the same. It just isn't. Some other moves I think Montreal could make, but we'll leave that discussion for another day. But again, good move by Montreal. And for the Blues, again, shedding some of its needed cap space, I do think they need to shed more to re-sign their captain and Alex Pietrangelo. So we'll have to keep eyes on both clubs for any further updates. Switching gears back to more local, Noah, kind of sad news, but also kind of some interesting news. Mark Surdich is a name that's known, at least especially here in the upper Midwest. 99 years old, recently passed away in the Duluth area. And he was featured about a year ago because he played hockey a couple times a week up until literally a couple weeks ago before he passed. Very inspirational story. I'm hoping just to be able to walk and make it to 99 years old. I mean, I'm already, halfway there? Yeah. I mean, no, honestly. So, it's cool to see someone with a love of the game. And, there was talk about a personality, being a very positive figure for other players that were on the ice, whether they were older or younger. Just kind of a neat story, just unfortunate that, he unfortunately passed away of natural causes. But cool to see that someone at 99 years old lacing up the skates and using that as his, the way that he gets a smile every day.
Yeah, oldest hockey player in the world by far. And I think it's just one of those things that shows that this game really, truly, and honestly is for everybody. And I think about obviously, Nick, you and I played at a fairly high level, had the chance to play even higher. But I think back, those open ice sessions, right? Those men's rec sessions, those whatever have you, where like for here in Minot, they have the Air Force Base, and guys who have never tried hockey or really haven't skated that much, they'll come out and the Air Force, they have their own team at the Minot Air Force Base that goes down and competes in a tournament in Vegas. Well, then there's a bunch of other guys that come out on the ice with the actual team. They've hardly played hockey before, but you get to go out, you get to pass with them, you get to kind of teach them the game. And it's really funny. Like, they're older than you. Well, they're older than me anyway. They might be about the same age as you, but it's just really fun to be able to share the game with someone who doesn't predominantly fit the age bracket of teaching them the game of hockey. But you know what? They have a passion for it. They love it. They want to get into it. And really, it just shows that, if you're 3 years old, 30 years old, 80 years old, if you want to try the game of hockey, there's definitely people out there that are willing to help you and willing to get you on the rink and get you on the ice. So, no, really cool to see, especially in his later years. I mean, he kind of became a cult figure in some sort, just getting to see what he was able to do simply by jumping on the ice a couple times a week. So, very sad to hear of his passing, Nick. We wish his family all the best, but what a life. What a life. You know what? If one day the good Lord takes me, dying doing what I love, being around the game of hockey, not a bad way to go.
Not a bad way at all. Speaking of ways to go, we had, as far as NHL fans are concerned, quite the day of hockey yesterday. Two game sevens, I should say. First between Dallas and Colorado, and then Vegas against Vancouver. Now, a sub note was that both Colorado and Vegas led their series at 1.3 games to 1. Both Vancouver and Dallas fought their way back to even the series to force a game 7. And it really, again, Noah, in hockey, this is why we love playoff hockey, is that it ain't over until it's over. You have to be able to win that fourth game of a series. It is the hardest game to win, which is to put a team away. And what ended up happening? And it's always that unsung hero, that we always hear about, and it's going to be Kivi Ranta for Dallas with the hat trick and the overtime winner that sends Dallas to the Western Conference Final over the heavily favored Colorado Avalanche. And then the luck ran out for the Vancouver Canucks, Thatcher Demko. Unbelievable performance the last 3 games. You really can't say anything but good things about Thatcher Demko. That's quite a goaltending duo they're going to have up there in British Columbia with Jacob Markstrom and, again, Thatcher Demko, who allowed only 1 goal, but just Vancouver seemed to run at the gas, and Vegas really taking it to the Canucks, trying to really assert themselves a spot in the Western Conference Final for the second time in their short 3-year history in the National Hockey League.
Don't I remember a certain co-host of mine telling me that Dallas-Colorado series wasn't going to be a close one?
And honestly, to be fair, it shouldn't have been. Colorado had some key injuries. Eric Johnson, Philip Grubauer. That team also did not get depth scoring as much as they needed to. The injury situation did not help them. And when you especially lose your starting goaltender, you and I have been through this too, it changes your mentality. It shouldn't change the way you play the game, but the reality is it can. And I just don't think, again, when you lose your best defensive defenseman, arguably a former first overall pick of the St. Louis Blues and former golfer Eric Johnson. Again, that team, to me, if there was one question about Colorado was, could they be too top-heavy? And the reality was they were. Without McKinnon, Landeskog, or Rantanen, and honestly, Burakovsky, you could almost throw the last couple of games was starting to heat up. But at the end of it, if they weren't scoring, that team wasn't putting any pucks in the net. And so to me, the depth scoring wasn't there. Dallas, starting in the first round, it started to really wake up their offense. There was a question to me about could they sustain that offensive pressure? They took advantage of a depleted defensive core. They took advantage of Michael Hutchinson and Pavel Francouz, who, again, it has just a couple of years in the league under his belt, and a lot of veteran presence there with Dallas. Again, Joe Pavelski's been in the playoffs quite a bit. Corey Perry's been there. Jimmy Benn and Tyler Seguin are starting to find their offensive flow. Dallas, again, was kind of a dark horse team, you can call it, where if they put it all together, they could certainly make noise. And here they are. They ousted, to me, a very offensively talented team, but just not enough to carry them through to the Western Final. So it's the Stars in that series. And yeah, I'll admit I was wrong, and I was not happy about it. I'll put it to you that way.
Yeah, Dallas Stars enter a conference final for the first time since 2008. Interesting you mentioned veteran presence because Andrew Cogliano was the one that stepped out of the lineup, previously known for pretty much having the legit opportunity to break an Ironman streak a couple years ago before a 2-game suspension. But interesting stat lines from both of these series, Nick. Dallas and Colorado, they started at 2 p.m. Mountain Time, which would be 3 p.m. Central Time. The last time an NHL Game 7 was in the afternoon, Nick. So before, I believe it's 5 o'clock. Do you know what year it was? Any guess?
1953.
Okay, now your answer makes mine look bad. Anyway, the Rangers and the Flyers in 1974, though. So it's been a long, long time. I don't know. Dallas, kind of exercised their second round woes, especially their Game 7 woes, of course, losing to the eventual Stanley Cup champion St. Louis in double overtime last year, standing on pretty much Ben Bishop's shoulders, I would pretty much say last year. But nonetheless, the Stars, Stars get a crack at it, and our pal Joey Erickson was none other than stoked, I saw on Twitter. So good to see the Stars. It's as much as I think Colorado's going to continue to be a contender, I don't know that Dallas is. So it's nice to kind of see them pay their dues, and let's see if they can match up against the Vegas Golden Knights team, who had a very interesting series of their own. Pretty much got to Game 7 off the back of Thatcher Demko, 139 minutes and 98 consecutive saves without allowing a goal before Shea Theodore finally found the twine for the Vegas Golden Knights to give them that all-important game-winning goal. So, interesting. I also forgot to mention in the Dallas series, I don't know why I have this under the Vegas Golden Knights one, that Kiviranta kid, first time a rookie has ever had a hat trick in Game 7 of a Stanley Cup.
It's a player's dream, honestly.
Yeah.
It really is.
That's the scenario you think about as a kid, right? It's the 7th time all time that it's happened in a Game 7, but first time a rookie has ever done it. And I would imagine probably the first time the game-winning goal in overtime was a hat trick goal in Game 7. I mean, I don't think that would be too much of a stretch to think.
We'd have to, double check the stats for that one. We'll have to do a deep dive. It could be, but I think we have to double check on that one. But I can't think of anybody at the top of my head as a rookie getting a hat trick overtime winner in a Game 7, nonetheless. A series clinching. That's the stuff you dream about on the, your backyard pond as well as in your roller hockey scenarios. So what a game for him.
Yeah, his shooting percentage was only 60%, just average. To put that in perspective for fans, the general shooting percentage, if you're a good forward, is somewhere around 10%. So pretty amazing. So a couple of other tidbits. Moving back to that Vegas Golden Knights series, Vegas did win the game 3-0, won the series 4-3. No team has ever lost in Game 7 in back-to-back years after leading 3-1 in both years. Vegas was in danger of that. But they weren't in that much danger, Nick. They were the better hockey team, I think, even in the tail end. Vancouver looked tired. Vancouver set a record for 6 shots total in the first 2 periods.
Yeah.
An all-time low in an NHL elimination game since 1967 when they began tracking those stats. They finished with 14 shots on goal. And the Vegas Golden Knights, they're going to match up against the Dallas Stars coming up soon, and rightfully so. The better team did win, but credit Vancouver. They pushed hard. They learned with a really young group. Holy smokes.
That's a heck of a hockey team, Vancouver.
The only time that I really got nervous, because I don't think Vancouver had much life in that game, besides Thatcher Demko, unfortunately. But the only time I was really nervous, there was that power play with about 9 minutes left that Vancouver got. Holy smokes. They didn't get a shot on goal, I don't think. But, man, can that group move the puck? Both of those units, just tic-tac-toe passing. Obviously, Vegas kind of found that formula and realized it's just a puck to the net 5 seconds into their own power play with 5 minutes left was going to be the eventual game winner. But, credit the Vancouver Canucks. They played well, for a young group that probably wasn't supposed to be that deep into the playoffs at this point this year. Just a heck of a run by them. Thatcher Demko, going to be interesting to see what they do with him as the Seattle Kraken expansion draft comes up. But Jacob Markstrom, don't be surprised if he's in a Canucks uniform for a long time when he gets healthy and moves into a contract negotiation this offseason.
A couple of things. You talk about what was nervous about that game. I just want to be really quick with this. To me, the longer that game went for Vegas without finding the back of the net, that made me nervous for Vegas players and fans. Only reason was, again, 98 straight saves. You're doing, and how many grade A opportunities did Vegas have in this game? They were imposing their will on Vancouver. I just think Vancouver, were they timid? I don't know. It just, if you go back and watch the game, it just seemed like, you could make the argument they were tired, and maybe it was. But Vegas seemed like they had a mission. They were wanting to prove, we don't want to let this slip away from us. But even then, when you're going up against a goaltender that you just can't beat, frustration can get set in. And, I was watching the game with my dad, and, we were mentioning to each other that this is a game where that first goal that goes in is so huge. And the longer that Vegas went into the third and further into the game, I should say, without scoring, that gets under your skin a little bit. And to me, the hockey is a game of bounces, right? Vancouver had a couple of good chances in the third, about maybe 5 or 6 minutes in. It was kind of a quick back-to-back sequence. But imagine also what a save by Robin Leonard when he robbed Brock Besser. I don't think we're having the conversation that Vegas is going to play Dallas if Brock Besser beats Robin Leonard there. That is a series-saving stop there by the trade acquisition in Robin Leonard. To me, again, it's just that if Vancouver scores there, Noah, that is desperation. And we know that when a hockey team gets desperate, knows they're the better team, is playing that they're the better team, you start taking some unnecessary chances. You start losing your structure a bit, and that could have spelled very dangerous for the Vegas Golden Knights. So, again, that Shea Theodore, just a quick wrister on the blue line, just the screen was there for Thatcher Demko, and it was just a perfectly placed shot off the post and in. Huge goal there for the Vegas Golden Knights. The other two were empty netters. So to me, it's kind of here there, but definitely the better team won, and it's going to be quite the heavyweight matchup between those two clubs in the West Final. That one has 6-7 games written all over it.
Yeah, definitely. I actually think Vegas was chasing a little bit and getting away from their structure, a little bit desperate to begin with. And as soon as they simplified the game, as soon as they, simple puck on net, right? Good things happen. But for Vancouver, getting outshot by 20 plus shots in a game just isn't a formula for success. But I also think back to, I believe it was the 2017 Stanley Cup final game 6, Pittsburgh and Nashville, where Nashville controlled that entire game, had a goal disallowed in the second period, and then what does it take? A fluky bounce, Patrick Hornqvist off the butt of Pekka Rinne to win the Stanley Cup. So going to be interesting. Like you mentioned, Vegas and Dallas are going to match up in the Western Conference Final. And then the winner of our first series that was done in the second round, the Tampa Bay Lightning, have been anxiously awaiting the Game 7 winner that we'll have by the end of tonight between the New York Islanders and the Philadelphia Flyers. Philly, of course, took Game 6 in overtime. Oscar Lindblom returned to the lineup. Nick, very quickly before we jump into our Healthy Scratch interview and our listener question, your predictions. I'd like to hear who's going to win the game. For me, I feel like you're going to pick the Islanders, so go Philly.
I have to stick with my guns. Islanders, to me, they're starting to get exploited a little bit. They're starting to try to open up offensively. For the Islanders, they're a team that definitely plays better when they have a lead. And in games 5 and 6, it was Philly that was giving them, a run for their money. And some other guys are waking up scoring, right? So you have JVR, you have Claude Giroux finally finding the back of the net. It does not help for Philly that Sean Couturier is out of the lineup at least. Though we don't know if he's going to return for Game 7. We'll wait and see if he does make a return to the lineup. That'd be a huge boost if he does. But for New York, just get back to what you're doing. You got to slow the game down, again, clog up the neutral zone, and more so, you got to get Barzal, Beauvillier back on the score sheet. Anders Lee and Brock Nelson have been just catalysts for them up front, and they have to get back to that. And, I still think their goaltending's been good, but at the end of the day, New York's got to come up with their best game to get over Philly, which was the favorite team in the series. But New York certainly definitely doesn't want to let this one slip away when they were up 3-1.
Yeah, I think the key to the game for me, Philadelphia's got to find a way to convert on the power play. They've had some serious power play woes. First time they had multiple opportunities in one game this series. Had one in overtime last game. In that game, I believe they had 5 or 6 power plays in that game. So going to be interesting to see what Philly and Alain Vigneault bring to the table. And then, of course, on the other side, former Stanley Cup winner with the Washington Capitals and a masterful coaching pedigree in Barry Trotz for the New York Islanders. That one goes on tonight, September 5th. We're going to find out which one of us, Nick or I, is right. But with that, speaking of a duo and a pair that we did get to sit down with, it's our women's hockey segment, Nick. I finally got to sit down with the women's hockey associate coaches in Jinelle Siergiej, formerly known as Jinelle Zaugg, and then Molly Engstrom as well. We did have a couple of clicks or pops in my section of the audio segment just a couple times in this interview, so kind of bear with us on that. We're trying to figure it out with you guys as we speak, but nonetheless, just a really fun interview to sit down with. So, Nick, let's kick it right to them. Jinelle Siergiej and Molly Engstrom.
With a new guest joining every week, it's a lineup chock full of players, coaches, fans, and more. This week's special guest is the Healthy Scratch.
And welcome to this week's Healthy Scratch interview segment. And joining us this week, 2 very special guests, associate coaches for the St. Cloud State women's hockey team. Joining us this week is Molly Engstrom and Jinelle Siergiej. Ladies, thank you for joining us this morning. How are we feeling?
Awesome. Today is the first day our girls get in the weight room with our strength coach.
Excited to kind of test them to see if they've been following the off-season protocols. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
We got a new strength coach this year, so we're just super excited to step into this season. It's a little bit different, but at the same time, I think we're all super excited to see the strides we can make in the weight room.
Yeah, we're super excited to have you here. I do kind of want to ask, because you two were my first official radio interview when I first started in St. Cloud. And do you happen to remember the opening of that interview at all when I came to the office and sat down? Do you remember the beginning of it at all by chance? Not really. No. So Nick, to fill the listeners in, they have a lot of accolades being really good college hockey, Olympic hockey players. So my intro was 3.5 minutes just breaking down what all their accolades were instead of just saying hi and asking them how they were. So they were my first broadcasting learning. So thank you, ladies. I appreciate it. Happy to have you here. But speaking of broadcasting and hockey, what have you both been doing to kind of stay ready in the offseason and kind of prepare for the unknown that comes with women's hockey? Maybe Molly, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, this summer was an interesting one. We went through a little bit of transition with our strength coach, so that was interesting, keeping the ladies on track with their workouts. But once John Swanson took over, that was an amazing feat, it felt like. And I think we're really excited to see where they're at and where they're going with that. Other than that, just trying to stay on recruiting, be as creative as we can with the dead period that's been pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. But yeah, just trying to stay in touch. We've had a lot of Zoom calls, covering various things, just trying to stay as close as we can to them. Campus is awesome.
And then, I'm going to stick with you on this one. We were talking just before the show, and you had shared a pretty cool story about an old cabin that, as far as a non-hockey related topic that's been keeping you busy. It sounds like this property was a victim of the Siren tornado in 2001, and it was a property owned by your parents. And now there seems to be a changing of ownership and also going to be a changing of maybe how this property looks. Can you fill our listeners in on maybe an exciting project you've had to keeping you busy over the summer?
Yeah, it was kind of turned into a little bit of a COVID project. So I was just saying that we're renovating an old house. It's probably 100 years old, and it was gutted when we had the tornado in 2001. So yeah, that's just been keeping my hands busy this summer. As I was saying, just between managing that on the ground and then the Zoom calls with St. Cloud and some USA hockey stuff, it's been a really, really busy summer.
Yeah, both of you, Wisconsin natives and ultimately Wisconsin Badgers. We'll start with you, Jinelle. Can you kind of talk about your journey as a youth hockey player growing up, getting ready in the state of Wisconsin, and then definitely your perspective. We'll pull it up for our viewers that are on the YouTube page, but I believe it was 2007. Was it quadruple overtime against Harvard? 1-0 winner to send your team on to an eventual, I believe, national championship at some point there. What did it mean for you to be from the state and end up as a Wisconsin Badger and kind of go through that process for you?
I think something probably similar to Molly coming from a very small town. Molly coming from Siren, and myself I'm from Eagle River, so very small towns in Wisconsin. I think just growing up playing boys hockey, girls here and there, whether it was a prep school for Molly or AAA, Madison Capitals for me, kind of getting a feel for the sport and then eventually falling in love with it and wanting to play for the Badgers. For me personally, didn't know really where I would end up kind of on that team, but I was fortunate for Mark to just kind of see potential in me and kind of transform me into the player that I became. Actually, a fun picture in the background is actually that Harvard goal that you were talking about, but just a great experience to play for the Badgers and be, the only Division I school in Wisconsin. You have the support of the entire state. So everybody in Wisconsin wears Badger gear. Everybody knows the sports, and we're supportive. Coming from a small town, you literally had the entire town cheering for you. So that was just an amazing experience. And it was the same thing moving to the U.S. team. You had not only the state cheering for you, but your small town. So I felt very blessed to be a part of that. And moving into the college coaching role, it's very similar. Like, it doesn't matter where you coach, where you're from in the small towns, like, they're going to be supportive of you. So people back home, yeah, they're Badger fans, but when we play the Badgers for St. Cloud, they cheer for St. Cloud because they're still supportive of us. So it's pretty great.
Yeah, Jinelle, kind of a star forward with your counterpart, Sarah Bauer, feeding you some pucks all day so you can put them in the back of the net. And then Molly, your time was a little earlier than Jinelle's. You guys kind of linked up at the tail end of your career and the start of hers with the Badgers. You were a defenseman. Was there any kind of group of players or somebody that really stuck out to you? Maybe it was Mark Johnson that really helped you develop your game at UW-Madison.
Yeah, I think I just had such an amazing experience there. I think when I first went in and got to Wisconsin, the upperclassmen had a big impact on me at the time. Sis Paulson, Jackie McMillan. They're just kind of like the legendary group for me. And then, yes, of course, Mark Johnson. I think he just kind of changed my life, and I think I told him that at one point, it's not just about hockey. He was just such a great mentor. And I just find it so fascinating with him, how he can have such an impact on people and players with so few words. Like, he is not a man of many words, but yeah, I've just taken, how he coached us through. I had him for 3 years at Wisconsin, and then with the U.S. team, and I've just taken what I learned from him as a player and now into coaching, in my own life. So pretty powerful stuff, to be honest, actually.
I want to piggyback off the kind of the theme of that same question for both of you. Jinelle, I want to start with you. I'm always fascinated by, how people get into hockey, as far as, what was their inspiration? Who was maybe the driving force behind it? For me, when I was a kid, it was my dad. When I was 2 years old, the first pair of hockey skates and pushing a folding steel chair on a pond in the backyard. So that to me was kind of my introduction to the game. Jinelle, I want to start with you. How did you get introduced to the game of hockey?
My parents moved up to Eagle River when I was 6 years old. And anyone that knows Eagle River, it's known for hockey. We're home of the Dome, which is one of the oldest rinks here in the United States. And honestly, our neighbor kind of got us into it, playing pond hockey on the lake. I had learned to skate when I was little, and in figure skates, I will admit it. But then when my brother got put into squirts, they needed another player, and I just naturally jumped in, the youngest of four. So kind of fell in love with the game. And my dad, I would give a lot of credit to, as far as just keeping me into it and really giving me a passion for it. He helped coach me for a couple of years before I moved into high school boys. But it's just so fun coming from a community that loves hockey. A lot of communities here in Minnesota are very similar, that you want to play, you want to know how to play. And when you start playing, you don't want to stop, because of not only the people you meet through the sport of hockey, but the places it can take you. I mean, I've traveled all over the world, with the sport of hockey, and it's given me so many friends. I mean, who knew that Molly and I would end up coaching together, meeting through the sport of hockey, and being from, towns that are only 3 hours away from each other in Wisconsin. We would have never known each other, but thanks to the sport of hockey, we are where we are, and we got to meet people like Mark Johnson and many others that have influenced us, not only on the ice, but off the ice as well.
And then, Molly, I'll go back to you in the same question. You already talked about the impact Mark Johnson's had on you, but as far as maybe in your early days, who was kind of the driving force behind you getting into the sport and also getting into a level where you became quite the athlete in the sport as well?
Yeah, I started on an outdoor rink in Webster, Wisconsin, just north of Siren, and it was just my brother played, and I watched him. I hung over the boards. It was chicken wire, so you found the open space in the chicken wire and hung over the boards and told my mom and dad, "Hey, I want to do that." But I had a lot of really great coaches, and I know that some athletes don't have those kinds of experiences with coaches. But I feel like I had a really amazing line of coaches from the youth in Webster. And then Shane Cry was a instrumental coach in my life. He was with the Minnesota Thoroughbred. So that was when I started playing girls hockey. I started traveling down to the cities to do that. And then, just various boys teams that I made, higher level boys teams, and the coaches, UW Stevens Point, I think, was one of the coaches there. And he just treated me like one of the boys. And in the best way, just treated me like an athlete. So again, and then I went on to Culver, in Indiana, and David Gerard was there, and then on to UW, and just the various coaches that we've had through the national team. So I feel, to reiterate some verbiage that Jinelle said, blessed with my career and the coaches and mentors in my life.
Yes, speaking of coaching as well, you both, of course, were on the Olympic team together, I believe in 2010. But when I spoke to you guys earlier last year, you talked about how you guys, you were teammates. You weren't best friends. You weren't close. You just, you did the job together and you just supported each other as teammates. And I think I remember, Jinelle, you specifically, you entering, I believe, your 7th year in coaching, and Molly, this will be your second go around with St. Cloud State. How you talked about never burning bridges with your teammates, because you never know in the coaching world where it'll find you. Starting with you, Jinelle, how did your road lead you to St. Cloud State, and when did you know that you wanted to become a coach?
Absolutely on the don't burn any bridges. I mean, even through the college recruiting, the way you interact with college coaches, whether it was D3 or D1, my parents did a really great job and really educate me in how important it was to have good relationships and to not burn those bridges. And it's funny because now I work with some of those coaches that recruited me back in the day, which is crazy. But after the 2010 Olympics, and I ended my playing career, I knew I wanted to get into coaching because I honestly didn't know what else I was going to do with my life. When you go to college, I always joke that you major in hockey, but for me, that was just such a big part of my university experience. I really didn't know what I wanted to do for a profession outside of it. I just had a passion for teaching young kids, and then moving into teaching high school and coaching high school right away after the Olympics made me want to work with a higher caliber athlete. So I jumped into it before the 2014 Olympics, because I knew that following the 2014 Olympics, that if those players wanted to get into coaching, they might get priority over me because they're straight out of the Olympics, and for the demand for high caliber athletes moving into the coaching role. So I knew that my window to get in was kind of short. So I applied right away, and thankfully my husband was supportive because we picked up and moved to Pittsburgh because it was the only really job opening. But funny story, I reached out to St. Cloud when I wanted to get into coaching because I wanted to be here in St. Cloud. And I don't know, why. I feel like God had a plan for me over here eventually. And it obviously it ended up getting me here. I just had a heart for this program, part of because I knew that this program, and I still believe it, has a lot of potential, and that they weren't showing it in their numbers in the league. I knew that it was a place that I could be within driving distance to family and friends, which was also very important to me. And it was in the WCHA. So it checked a lot of those boxes of places that I wanted to coach and I wanted to be a part of. So I went to Pittsburgh for the year. And when I was working national camp right here in St. Cloud, I found out that there was job openings, and I right away went up and met Eric Rude, the former head coach here. And I told him I wanted to work for him here, and got to know him. And we had just bought and flipped a house, kind of what Molly is doing right now in Pittsburgh. So my husband would joke because he was covered in drywall dust when I called him and said, "Do you want to move to St. Cloud?" He wasn't too thrilled about it, but we both knew that the stepping stone in Pittsburgh was going to be short because we wanted to be back in the WCHA in the Midwest. So long story, but it just my heart was here in St. Cloud, and it's been a great 6 years, and I'm just so excited for where we've brought this program so far, and I'm so excited for where we're headed. With not only the coaches, with bringing Molly on board, but the players that we've brought. I just see this program continuing to climb the I don't want to say leaderboard, but to climb the WCHA league for sure.
Yeah, Molly, don't leave us anytime soon after you finish flipping your house. But speaking of potentially bringing a freshman class last year, that was really impressive. So you have a really good foundational building block, especially with Emma Paluzny coming back in the net for her senior year. But speaking of freshmen and first-timers last year, Molly Engstrom got her first year behind the bench. And Molly, you're kind of interesting too. I believe, didn't somebody maybe just kind of reach out to you about coaching? Did you ever expect that you would end up being a St. Cloud State Husky? And how excited are you, I should say, for that now sophomore group to jump into their role with a now incoming freshman class that's going to be pretty good as well?
Well, yeah, to answer your first question, I had absolutely no vision, intention of ending up at St. Cloud. I mean, I think life is just amazing. You know, I think I'm the kind of person that is able to take one step at a time. You know, and Jinelle kind of alluded to not knowing what she was going to do in her career. After I had a long career with the national team, and then I went over and got my master's and just kind of plugged away. As time went on, I had a feeling that I always had a feeling that I would coach. Not sure what capacity, but I started putting my resume out there before I got in touch with St. Cloud to a couple schools. So it was on my mind. I'm so happy the way that it worked out. And yeah, you're right. It wasn't the job at St. Cloud last year. I don't think it was quite posted yet. It was kind of word of mouth. Ended up applying, and actually Jinelle was the first call that I made, and I was like, hey, what's the deal? It just ended up going really well. But to answer the second part of the question, yeah, I'm excited. You know, I had 1 year to get to know Jinelle now in this chapter in our life, and her as a coach, and obviously Steve. I think it takes time in any relationship to get to know whether, you know, it's in your profession. So kind of jumped over that step. And then I'm really excited about our freshman class. It's big. I think there's a lot of talent. So I'm just hoping that we can play this year. You know, I hope that it rolls out pretty soon.
Yeah, definitely. Jinelle, flipping it back to you. Speaking of that freshman class, I believe you have a pretty good player from the Honey Bake team jumping on your squad. Can you kind of fill us in? Is it 7 or 8 new signees that you have on the group? And then what do you expect from your sophomore group led by Klara Himlerova, who had the best season since Laura Kluga a couple of years ago?
You know, it's fun, and Molly's just starting to feel what I feel every year, because you get more connected with the players, and the players you recruit, you see them come in, and it's really exciting. And I think that's why you see coaches staying at programs for so long, because all the work we do in these relationships we get to make with our recruits and then our incoming classes, it's a breath of fresh air to see them here on campus. And this year especially, just with all of our internationals we brought in, to have them here is just amazing, especially with everything that this country and this world has gone through this year. So our class this year, Emma Gentry from Honey Bake, we're super excited about having her here. We're excited about the entire class. I mean, we have 7 freshmen and 1 transfer, you know, from all over the world. We have 3 Europeans in that class. So we're just excited about each one of them. They bring something different. Every player in that freshman class is going to add to our team, and they're going to make us better. And honestly, like, I have mixed emotions about kind of where we're at, because I think our team's going to just really take strides training together at this season, because we can't play games. We can focus on the weight training, and we have never been able to do that because we have girls from all over the world that they go home, play with their national teams or whatever it is in the summer. So this is just going to be some, you know, uncharted territory for this fall. But I think our team has really embraced it. They've been awesome. Super excited to see them on the ice together yesterday for the first time after all the quarantine stuff. You know, and moving into, you know, the kind of testing evaluation time, you know, I'm very excited. So the sophomore class, you know, Savar and Himlerova, both of them back are just taking strides, making improvements. As that entire class, we were really excited and happy with how that class did last year. So we're expecting them to just make strides as well this year. And I think the weight room piece and the extra work we can put into skills and development is also just going to help them. So whenever we do start our season, I think we're going to see huge strides from last year with not only those 8 freshmen, but that sophomore class as well. Just because your freshman year, you come in, there's lots of unknowns. You don't get the strength training the same as you do coming into your sophomore year. So I'm super excited for the team. And like Molly said, like, we're just crossing our fingers that we can have a season. But if we, depending on when it starts, whether it starts in November or January or whenever it does, I think you're going to see a different team on the ice, because our underclassmen, our freshmen and our sophomore class is going to really help our program.
I want to ask about kind of coaching in a sense of, and maybe some inspiration. Molly, you talked about the different coaches and how you're blessed to have the coaches you have, and now you're a coach yourself, and in a kind of a weird twisted way, you're a sophomore yourself. And I want to ask you, from last season being your first season behind the bench, what have you learned about coaching? And from those inspirations and from those coaches that you had, have you taken anything from those coaches that you had and are using that as part of how you coach and how you teach here at St. Cloud State?
Yeah, it's my sophomore year coaching here and in the NCAA, but, I've been around the game for a while, and I've coached a lot of hockey. So I'm learning about, like I said, Steve and Jinelle, and as we create our coaching staff and our team there. But I think, honestly, what I'm learning, the biggest learning curve for me is all the administrative stuff, working in the NCAA, organizing the team, all of the rules. Like, that's the biggest learning curve. I feel the most comfortable when we're on the ice. I feel the most comfortable when we're in games, stuff like that, when we're doing video. And then as far as, what I've taken from the coaches that I've learned, absolutely. I think it's important to connect with the players, to understand, to see them, and as individuals, and understand where they're coming from, not catering to them every single day, but understanding, like, where they're at, even in their day, in their week, and that's the cool thing about coaching. You got to try to get 24, 25, 26 people all on the same page, when they all have different days at different times, including the coaching staff. So yeah, I just, obviously try to take the positive things that I've learned from the coaches in my past. And I love working with players, in every aspect. So.
I'll pose a similar question, but a little bit different take. You've been behind the bench now for a little bit longer than Molly has. But how would you describe your coaching style? Are you the D2 Mighty Ducks, where you're Gordon Bombay, you Captain Blood, or are you kind of like the players coach, like a Bruce Boudreau? How would you describe your coaching style?
Well, I think, gosh. Well, it's hard to actually say like how my coaching style is. The girls will make fun of me in different ways because every coach is a little bit different. But like Molly said, like, I love being on the ice. I love everything about it. And the reason I coach is for the players. I think all of us coaches do that. So it's depending on what they need. And I feel like I'm definitely one that likes to give a sandwich between good feedback, constructive criticism, and something they've done positive. So I'm definitely one that will be hard on them, but I also feel like, being a female in this role, you can do that. You can push them and be hard on them. So I really like to challenge them. I don't like to do a lot during the games. I feel that is the time to really let the players play. But during the week, and really getting on the players for, maybe it's a bad habit, maybe it's holding onto the puck too long, maybe it's not shooting when they have the opportunity. I like to really get on them for those different skill areas that we work on. because I think they take that criticism very well. From, at least I feel like they've taken it very well from me. And I think as women in this role, we're allowed to push them further and maybe get on their case a little more. So I definitely feel like I'm that kind of coach, but I also feel like I enjoy being one that they can come to at any time, one that can kind of be that role of the go-between. They can talk to me about anything, whether it's on or off the ice. And like Molly said, like every day changes for the players. So we really have to have our pulse on the team and feeling what was going on in class today, or, you know, how are these online classes going right now, or how is testing, or what's going on at home, because there's a lot of things that play into their on-ice performance. And kind of understanding and leaving those lines of communication open is very important, because otherwise you don't know what's going on. And then you get down on them, and then that doesn't help them be successful. So there's definitely a balancing act, and every single player on our team is different. As Molly will say as well, like each player needs something different from us. You can't put them all in a box and think they can, you know, you can treat them all the same, because you can't. And maybe that's just different from when we played, or maybe it's just us learning and kind of evolving with the game. Because I think the players really thrive under, you know, different feedback and different coaching styles. But that's how I've found kind of my role. And I don't know, category, I don't know what I would categorize myself as.
You know, I got to jump on the ice with you too one day, and I'd be curious to see what your coaching evaluation of me would have been. But speaking of evaluations, your team gets good goaltending, has for the last couple of years. You do have the departure of Janine Alder, who was a backstop for your team, but Emma Paluzny really, I mean, essentially took the reins last year, but is ready to carry the torch into her senior season. So the defense is there. But you talk about that shoot first mentality. I think of a player like Olivia Savard, who really found that ability in the second half of her freshman year, capped it off with a 1-0 overtime win against Bemidji on home ice to finish the last game in the Herb. What does the team, starting with you, Jinelle, need to do to kind of find that scoring touch? You know, you were a scorer yourself, but find that killer thing, so to speak, that you can teach it, but you really have to cultivate it in people's minds instead of just teaching it as a skill itself.
I mean, that's a tough one. If I knew the recipe to a goal score, you know, every program would want it. But I think every player is different. Some girls just have a knack for the net, and Liv Savard definitely is one of them. You know, you can teach a lot of things, but you can't. I don't believe you can actually teach that. It's one that can be developed, and you can try to give them different scenarios, but when it comes to the game, like, they have to learn how to adjust to each situation. So it's a tricky one, right? Because I work on shooting and scoring with the girls all the time, but naturally some players are going to be better at it than others. So for us, we just really work on giving them different scenarios, different areas where they can feel the pressure, and teaching them to keep their head up and being aware, and then shoot at any position. Because if they're aware of the situation and they can get a shot off no matter what, they're going to know when the right time to pull the trigger is. But that's a tricky one, because I don't think it comes just naturally, or should I say, you can't teach it. It comes naturally in their head to be, you know, one that just has a knack for the net, just loves to shoot.
And speaking of trying to have players not have a knack for the net, as in the opposing team, Molly, you work with the defensive core, being a defenseman yourself. What kind of is the key for this team to, you know, make sure that the shifts are short in your own zone, you're getting pucks out of the zone, and just being catalyst from the back end? I think of another freshman player in Annika Fazokas, who's going to be a great first pass defenseman for many years to come for this team. I mean, what's important on the defensive side to stymie the opposing rush and then just make plays moving up the ice?
Yeah, unfortunately, Annika left us. So,
I was just going to say, we might have to go back on that one.
yeah, I wish she was here, but she decided to stay home this year, and she's going to, I think, I don't want to put words in her mouth at all, but maybe not take hockey so seriously, you know, and figure out her career and for her life. So unfortunately we won't have her back, but we have a couple of new additions to touch on that. But yeah, I mean, it's for me, it's just having a good strong D zone presence, get the puck out of the zone. That's right. Keep pucks out of the net and get pucks out of the zone.
Such a simple recipe, right?
Exactly. So obviously, in our practices and in our as we strategize in our planning, we build drills all around that. But yeah, ultimately we want to have a strong D zone presence, net presence. We want to be tough in front of the net, help Emma out, or whoever, Sonia Hola, Carl, and just get our forwards going the other way as quickly as possible. And we can have a good, strong transition game. I think you put yourself in a good position to be in the offensive zone.
I want to touch on the strength and conditioning change just really briefly here. Jinelle, I'll just ask you a very simple question. That is, was there, a philosophy change that you were looking for from the strength and conditioning coach? Are you looking to, make any changes as far as how this team looks, or how, do we want to see more speed on the ice? I suppose, was there, a reason for the change? And I guess what's, some of the things that there is that we want to see converted that to the ice and how this team plays against the opponents in the WCHA?
Yeah, the program decided to make a change. Travis Zins did an amazing job, and he's just focusing more with some of the other sports here at St. Cloud. So I think we just felt the need to have more availability for our programs here, and Travis did an excellent job with the team for the last 6 years I've been here, and even before that. So he's kind of just moved into a different role here at St. Cloud with some of the other programs, and then we got a new GA, Jake, coming up from the U of M. So we're just super excited about the transition, and the reason I think we're most excited is John Swanson, who's an alumni of here, great hockey player, and also does obviously strength training up in the Sauk Rapids Sartell area. He has just really helped transition this program into being more specialized per player. All of our players are so different, just like we talked before about how they respond differently to us coaches. They're also very different and unique in the weight room. And what we're most excited about is just having more specialty workouts, because we're going to be able to have kind of one strength coach working with us. So, with the men's and women's team, being able to have more one-on-one attention based off of what their needs are. We have one player like Emma Gentry coming in as, just a big, strong forward, and then we have somebody like Hannah Bates, who's a senior, who's just built so different from Emma Gentry. And there's nothing wrong with that, but how can we make them the best player they can possibly be on different programs? So we're just really excited about that transition, just because of that. And our GA, just having him here. We're really excited about Jake being here and working with Swanson and the whole team. And with that team also comes Brian Demain, our trainer. So he's also going to work for injury prevention and stuff like that. So we're really excited about the transition.
And then Molly, just a quick piggyback off of that too. Is there anything we're going to notice as far as a change in the product on the ice too this year? Again, you talk about a big freshman class as well as a transfer coming in. What do you know about the players, and what could they inject into the lineup to help you guys, again, as you mentioned, climb the WCHA ladder to try to catch some of those top programs such as Wisconsin and Minnesota?
Yeah, I think the thing that you have to count on as a coach, whether you're a coach or a player, is you have to count on the growth that happened over the summer. As the athlete, you have to hunker down and do your off ice training, increase your strength and your power and your conditioning, and decrease your body fat and all of that stuff. Do whatever you can to be better the next year. So, we're counting on that as a coaching staff. And then obviously you interject those 8 freshmen in there and figure out how to put those pieces together. It was an interesting summer. The girls were locked out of the gym, with the COVID thing, and a lot of them, depending on where they were, I think rinks are legally still closed in Michigan, so depending on where they were, some got on the ice, some didn't. But the fact of the matter is everybody's in the same boat. It doesn't matter if you're St. Cloud or Wisconsin or Minnesota or Duluth. So it will be interesting, but I think this is one of the most exciting times of the year is when you get everybody back on campus and you get to see who trained, how you trained, what did you learn about yourself? How did you grow? And that's what keeps us coming back every year. If we didn't change over the course of the summer every year, it's kind of a moot point. So anyway, I hope, I hope soon we'll get going and we'll get to start to work with these players and see how much growth they have made over this past summer.
Yeah, we'll definitely let you guys get to it in just a moment here. Joining us on this Tuesday morning, once again, thank you. Nick and I only have a question apiece left for you. Molly, we'll start with you, going back either to your coaching or your playing days, but for sure coaching, as you look at the hopeful schedule that will come out for this year, playing in the WCHA and exhibition non-conference games, is there a place that you kind of have circled on the calendar as an opponent that you really enjoy playing? Or is there, a trip to New York or something like that you just, I believe you guys went to Niagara Falls last year. Is there just kind of experiences like that really stand out to you?
The beauty of playing in the WCHA is I look forward to every single game. And that's something that we talk to recruits about. That's something that when we played at Wisconsin, when I played in the WCHA, you can't take a night off. And that statement has become more and more true over the last, I think I graduated from Wisconsin 18 years ago. 19. So
It's just a number. It's all good.
Yeah, no, but I think it becomes more and more true every year. Look at what Ohio State did this year. In order to get into the tournament, they had to beat Wisconsin and Minnesota. So yeah, that's the beauty of playing in this league. And as a competitive person, it's somebody that wants to live at a high level and function at a high level. I appreciate being in this league and in this position. So, and I'm not sure how much traveling we're going to get to do. The Niagara Falls trip was really nice, but I don't know how often we'll be able to get on the plane this year. So.
Yeah, definitely. I believe you have the addition of St. Thomas, if I'm not mistaken, too, as the 8th team in the WCHA as well. So another addition to be aware of. And Jinelle, same question for you. Is there a place you really enjoy? I got just a feeling that it might be only an hour and a half south of us. I hear you like Ritter Arena, but what is your go-to place to play or coach in the WCHA?
I love going to Wisconsin. I enjoy playing Ritter, but I also, just love being back in Wisconsin, back on the campus. It's been fun. I have a 4 and a 2-year-old, and every year I bring my 4-year-old on a road trip. So wherever he comes with me, that's normally my favorite road trip of the year. So honestly, I love every single rink we go to. Each one's different and unique. They bring something different every time we get there. And it's just a really fun league to play in, beautiful facilities. We just have a lot of amazing coaches in our league as well. So going to each rink, you get to see the coaches that you've grown relationships with on the recruiting road, or, playing each other from the different benches. So I love every single team we get to go play. I'm excited for St. Thomas, their addition to the league, excited for their program there with their great coaching staff. We probably won't fly, which I don't necessarily, I don't know what the plan is there, but I do love taking the trips out east because we normally get to go to a different school that I've never been to. So that's a lot of times really fun as well. But yeah, I'm not biased. I like them all.
Final question here for you guys. Molly, I'll start with you. Let's keep it a little bit fun here, just because, again, it's definitely different times out there, and it's the end of the summer here. It's now September 1st, if we can believe it, and the leaves are already starting to change. What are some of your favorite fall activities besides throwing on some skates and some teaching hockey there at Herb Rush National Hockey Center? What do you like to keep yourself busy with? Do you have a pet? I mean, what kind of things that kind of keep you rolling when you're not inside the hockey rink?
Yeah, so in the fall here, I'm a summer person. So it's a little bit sad when the cool starts to come into the air, but I do love fall. I can't wait till the leaves change. But I'm super pumped to get out and go apple picking. Jinelle actually took some off of her tree in her yard and put them at my door at work yesterday. So I love apple picking. I have a mountain bike. I like to get out in the woods, especially when it's not scorching hot. And I have a little doggie. She's going to be a lab. She's going to be 2 years old in a couple days. So we stay busy outside. I spend a lot of time outside. All my free time is pretty much spent outside. So yeah, that's the extracurriculars.
And I hear that the dog also shares a title of co-assistant head coach. Is that right? I see that she's over at the herd quite often. So always good to see her around. And then Jinelle, how about yourself? As far as fun outside of the game, what do you like to do in your spare time when you're not coaching hockey?
Oh man, if I only had true spare time. I have a 2 and a 4-year-old, like I said, so anything and everything with them. We love to go bike riding. They both ride their big boy bikes, so we love to do that. We love to be outside. So, and whether it's outside in the fall or in the snow, we love it all. So my son's in soccer right now, which is really fun. But we love to go to apple orchards as well and make applesauce with all those yummy treats, and just be out in the beautiful North Woods, the paradise around here. So it's great. Love the weather.
It's certainly been really good weather indeed. And with that, Molly and Jinelle, we thank you very, very much for joining us this morning. Noah, it's always a pleasure to have these two ladies on anytime we get a chance to talk women's hockey with these two.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you again, ladies, so much. You guys have been, if anyone's been down in the Herbrooks and had a chance to visit the women's hockey team, they're cordial, they're fun to work with, and just a real blast to be around. And a hockey team that I wish the best of luck, because you guys have some good things coming down the pipeline. That's for darn sure. So ladies, thanks once again, and best of luck to you both.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks,
Appreciate
Noah.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take the Huskies Warming House podcast wherever you go. Find the newest episodes or listen to your favorite on iTunes and Podbean. Get all the latest news and updates at huskieswarminghousepodcast.com and look for our Facebook page, the Huskies Warming House Podcast, as well as our Twitter feed at Warming House Den. Our Twitter feed will host trivia, updates, and questions for fans, as well as a mailbag where you can tweet us anytime with your questions, concerns, or listener suggestion. And for business inquiries, email us at huskieswarminghousepodcast@outlook.com.
And thank you once again to both Molly Engstrom and Jinelle Siergiej, again, associate coaches with the women's St. Cloud hockey team. Hoping to see them in action very soon. Noah, just the knowledge that they have is unbelievable. And again, their experience in the game is unmatched. So really fortunate for the women's team to have those two behind the bench and coaching our young players.
Yeah, definitely. Always fun to talk to him. Always fun to talk to him in person, to be honest with you, because Janelle's a heck of a lot taller than you. So I always find that, yeah. And maybe a little bit of a better hockey player than both of us too. So pretty much a slap in the face for both of us, but no, really fun to sit down with both of them. Just knowledgeable hockey minds. And we got to jump on the ice with both of them a little bit. And geez, they can still play the game. Former Olympians, and certainly show no signs of slowing down anytime soon. But with that, Nick, let's get into the last portion of this segment, our listener question that we read off earlier. We'll read it for you one more time. We're going to spend just a cup of coffee on this one, Nick. It comes from our listener again, Derek Felksa, who's been awesome in helping us with our content. He says, the NCHC is always such a tough and difficult conference. Let's start with the first question, maybe, Nick. What school do you see as the favorite going into this season, and which might surprise you? So let's just start with those two to begin with. Is there a school that kind of stands out for you? For me, not to have a home state bias, but I have a hard time if the season does happen, not picking North Dakota. I just still think they're a powerhouse team. They find a way every night to kind of be that group that really has molded themselves. They've had like a rebuilding period after your Brock Besser, holy smokes. That kind of era, and of course that national championship, they had a little bit of retooling. They had some guys that left early in that group there for bigger and better things in the National Hockey League. But gee, Nick, I don't know, with a rocking crowd of almost 1,200 people every night in that building, they're a force to be reckoned with and a very difficult opponent. They travel well with their fans, and most of all, Nick, they're really good at hockey. So they're the team to beat for me.
You're not wrong. Please record this because you'll never hear me say that again. But honestly, at the end of it, I don't know if North Dakota, to me, is the favorite. And I'll explain why. North Dakota, they do have some really good freshmen coming in that are part of the U.S. National Development Program. Their names are escaping my head, but they just keep retooling some really, really good high-end talent. But for me, Denver is the team to watch this year. And the reason why I say that is head coach David Carle. He actually made the athletics list of top 40 people in hockey under the age of 30, I believe, and he was in that pack just because of the way that he coaches, he communicates. At Denver, it just seems to, no matter what happens, that you always seem to have a high degree of coaching pedigree that comes through that program. And you talk about what impact a coach can have in your program. Yes, North Dakota, to me, has the better player talent on their roster, but Denver plays such a smart brand of hockey. Again, with David Carle behind the bench, to me, I think Denver, with a little bit more of experience behind their bench, you have returning sophomore Bobby Brink, again, local Minnetonka celebrity here from the Twin Cities here, just a fantastic hockey player, also part of the U.S. national program. To me, Denver is going to make some noise coming up in the NCHC this year.
Yeah, going to be interesting. Denver, certainly, that was the other one I had on my list too. I think kind of Minnesota Duluth with the departure of Hunter Shepard and some of those higher end guys, obviously Perunovich, Hobie Baker winner this past season, I don't know if they're retooling quite yet, but they lost some high-end pieces. So, yeah, those two teams definitely have a certain chance to have number 1 and number 2 seeds in the NCHC, besides St. Cloud, obviously, right? I believe also, if I'm not mistaken, for North Dakota, real quickly, is Jordan Kawaguchi. He's still got one. He's coming
1 more year, and he's the captain. They just named him the captain again.
Yeah, so that's good news for North Dakota fans. Something for them to get behind. He's a heck of a hockey player and going to have a long career, I would say, somewhere. Don't know where he's going to end up, but he just something about him. He just kind of has that extra gear that I don't know if many players can get to. And speaking of an extra gear that maybe we don't know about yet, which team might surprise people? Nick, I think you and I might be in agreement on this. I feel like Nebraska Omaha was a really sneaky team last year. Just kind of a group, they gave St. Cloud a little bit of fits. They gave North Dakota fits. I believe the only group to beat North Dakota twice.
I believe so. Yeah.
In play. So they're a group that just, to me, I think is kind of on the rise a little bit. And I really like their color scheme too. I know it's something that we probably shouldn't talk about, but I don't know. I just clean look and a hockey team that has a really clean look to their game as well.
They play a very heavy brand of hockey for Nebraska Omaha. When you talk about a team that is built like North Dakota with speed and talent, how do you stop that? You play a bruising style of hockey, right? You be physical. And Nebraska Omaha, with Mike Gabonnet as their head coach, that's the way they want to play. They want to play on the boards. They want to play below. They want to play that grinding style of hockey. The one thing that Omaha is lacking a bit is just offensive talent, honestly. NCHC, as with between St. Cloud, Denver, Colorado College, North Dakota, there's plenty of teams to choose from as far as where you want to be. And Mike Gabonnet still trying to develop his program, trying to really make Nebraska Omaha kind of that brand of hockey, but you still need players that put the puck in the back of the net. So if there's one thing that maybe is like the big question mark with the Mavericks is, can they have enough scoring prowess? But that brand of hockey that they play, when that team buys in, as you mentioned, they can really give other teams fits. And they did actually give St. Cloud State some fits the last couple of seasons when they played. They're not an easy team to play against because, again, they will just rough you up pretty much all 60 minutes. So they're a team that could be surprising. I got to look at their freshman class that's coming in. But, again, they play a really good old school, I would say, brand of hockey, and they could make some surprising moves this season coming up. You mentioned some other teams maybe with some retooling and some players leaving, say like Western Michigan, another team we were talking about that lost some of their top-notch players. So Omaha could be jumping the ranks here this season as long as they play their cards correctly.
Yeah, and I always think St. Cloud surprises people every year to begin too. So hopefully the Huskies have a really strong season. Hopefully the season happens, Nick. But Nebraska Omaha gave the Huskies fits and won a very crucial game that the Huskies probably needed, trying to climb back into the standings late in the year. This game was around Christmas time. that 4-3 overtime win, just, I believe, maybe 11 seconds into the overtime, if I'm not mistaken. Nebraska-Omaha got the job done there. So going to be fun to watch. Just want to see some NCHC action. And our last question in this grouping, Nick, who's going to be that surprise standout player or goalie that few have heard, but many soon will? I got a feeling you might be picking a goalie. For me, he's a guy that I have a couple, actually. So I'm gonna steal the spotlight for half a second here. We talked about him earlier, Viti Miettinen for St. Cloud. I know we had an article written about him in The Athletic, but I think he's just a guy that, might still fly under the radar a little bit for people just because they haven't seen him play, in North America. And yeah, I just feel like he's going to be a heck of a catalyst for St. Cloud. So he's a guy to watch out for. But if we're not being hometown biased, Nick, a guy that, again, really might not be under the radar, but for me, I think just really doesn't get the attention he deserves, especially had a really strong finish to the year. That's Minnesota Duluth's Cole Koepke. I just thought that I believe he's entering his junior year, if I'm not mistaken.
Junior or senior year, one of the two.
Definitely an upperclassman year, and hopefully he hasn't signed somewhere and is making me look silly right now. But for me, I remember when we went up to Duluth, we talked about he was on, I think, a pretty strong point streak. And he's a guy that he had 33 points last year. He was second in the team in scoring along with Noah Cates, who's another guy that's fantastic as well. But, it's weird to say that a guy like that might be under the radar. But for me, I just kind of thought he plays a really nice, quiet game, right? You think about Duluth's Hunter Shepard, how quiet of a goaltender he is. Well, I think that Cole Koepke is the same way as a player. Just everything he does, it's not all that flashy. It's just really fluid. He's always in the right place at the right time, making the right plays. I'd love to hear Brett Larson's opinion on Cole Koepke just because he was around that program at Minnesota Duluth so much. But yeah, for me, he's kind of the guy that, I don't know if he'd surprise people, but I still think he's got even more untapped potential. He's going to be a heck of a hockey player and probably one of the leading scorers in the NCHC, in my opinion.
100%. Now, before I list off, I should say, who I think, did the question list what goaltender was going to surprise people? I just want to make sure I'm hearing you right.
Player/goaltender.
Player/goaltender. Well, mine is a goaltender, and it is Denver going to be sophomore goaltender, and his name is Magnus Corona. You talk about goaltending or, college hockey ranks and how difficult the goaltending position is. Just last episode, we had the 3 goaltenders on with us, and it's certainly a position that, can make or break a team. And how difficult, Noah, is it for a freshman to come in and essentially be the starter? Magnus Corona stands at 6'6". And in 27 games last season as a freshman, let's roll off some numbers, right? 16 wins, 6 losses, 4 ties. He stopped, 700 or 659 of his 716 shots. And how about this? 2.15 goals against average and a .920 save percentage with 3 shutouts. That's pretty impressive. Now, granted, he's on a team that does play very well in front of him, but that 6'6" frame, when you're in your butterfly, your shoulders almost take away the top of the net too. So he's a really good goaltender. I do remember watching him when Denver was in St. Cloud this last spring and just making the notion that, man, that goaltender is tough to beat. And again, with that big frame, he's athletic. And with the offense that Denver can carry, he can make his job easy. So Magnus Corona to me is a guy as a goaltender that will really, I think, become a namesake in the NCHC. I think he's got a chance to compete with Adam Shield to be the top 2 goaltenders in the conference, along with also St. Cloud State goaltender David Rennick. But to me, this Magnus Corona kid is one heck of a goaltender coming out of Sweden and is set to be having a really good sophomore season down there with the Pioneers.
Yeah, it should be interesting. I also think our Twitter sources confirmed that Jeff Finger might have another solid year in his league. With that, Nick, I think let's wrap things up. One more time, we do want to mention we are doing our follower drive. We are 110 followers away on Twitter and just under 30 followers away on Facebook from giving away 5 of these free Huskies Warming House podcast T-shirts and potentially a hat. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see how much you guys like us, and then we like you. So no, we love our fans, and we're super happy that you joined us here on this Saturday morning / afternoon whenever this episode gets out. Check out our 2-line fan trivia every Saturdays at noon. Find us on Twitter at Warming House Den, at HuskiesWarmingHousePodcast.com. We're on Facebook, and hopefully we're going to be on your airwaves every Saturday afternoon. Episode 27 is done, and episode 28 is going to get rocking and rolling at this time next week. Holy smokes, that was a long outro, Nick. Let's get the heck out of here. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone, and we'll see you next week.